The first time Adaora stepped through the wrought iron gates of the Nwokoye mansion in Lekki Phase 1, she clutched a cooler of jollof and peppered chicken the way a pilgrim clutches a relic. She'd made it herself, not because anyone asked, but because her mother always said, "When you go to a new home, bring your warmth in your hands." The compound shimmered with a kind of wealth that swallows footsteps. SUVs gleamed like polished obsidian, the marble floors shone, and the family's crest, two intertwined NS, sat above the entrance like a royal emblem. Somto, her new husband, squeezed her fingers. "Relax," he said. "They'll love you once they know you." The promise sounded like sunlight, even though the clouds were gathering. Inside, Madame Nwokoye looked her up and down with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Welcome," she said, and her gold bangles chimed. "Leave your cooler in the kitchen. The chef will see to it." Adaora murmured thanks and hurried off. She'd worn a simple emerald dress and fixed her hair into a neat low bun. She'd chosen minimal makeup. Elegance, in her mind, was quiet. At the dining table, the family spoke the language of influence, contracts, bank returns, and golf at a koi club. Adaora nodded, careful not to speak too much. When someone asked what she did, she said she ran a modest catering service and helped at her parish food drive. "A giver," Uncle Boniface said kindly. "We need more of those." Madame Nwokoye's smile thinned. After dinner, while the cousins laughed around the pool, Adaora gathered plates. The house star protested, "Madam, please." But old habits are stubborn. She rinsed glasses, wiped the spill no one noticed, and tucked a stray chair in line. She was used to serving. It never felt beneath her. Later, she brought a plate to Madame Nwokoye's sitting room. "Your jollof," she said softly. "I hope it's not too spicy." The older woman didn't touch it. "Our chef trained in Paris," she replied. "We're used to refinement." She set the plate aside, a dismissal dressed as a preference. In bed that night, Adaora lay awake while Somto scrolled his phone. "They just need time," he repeated. She wanted to believe it. She had married a man she loved. Steady, funny, brilliant with numbers. She could learn this new rhythm. Small slights arrived like mosquito bites. Tiny, constant, easy to ignore if you wanted sleep. Madame Nwokoye called her Ada instead of Adaora, then Neen, then you. Family group photos were arranged so Adaora hovered at the edge of the frame. "We'll send you an invite," the sisters-in-law said about a charity ball. "Then we thought you were busy," when she asked later. Somto apologized when he noticed, but often he didn't notice. On Sunday, at church, a woman in a butter yellow jeel stopped to greet the family. "Ah, Chiamaka." Madame Nwokoye beamed, hugging her long and tight. "Our governor's daughter. Have you met my son, Somto?" The introduction hung in the air like a day. Adaora smiled politely. Afterward, in the car, she said nothing. Somto said nothing too. That evening, Adaora cooked Ifo Riro in their smaller kitchen off the main wing. She folded the stew until it glistened, tasting for salt the way her mother taught her, lightly, with gratitude. The chef knocked. "Madam says not to cook here. Smell carries." Adaora apologized and packed the pot. She wrote a note and left it on the counter. For the staff, with love. When she finally called her mother in Enugu, the older woman listened. "Daughter," Mama said, "water takes the shape of any container, but it is still water. Don't lose your sweetness." Adaora pressed her phone to her cheek and let the words seep in. A week later, the extended family gathered for Grandpa's 80th. The house pulsed with music. Men clapped each other's backs, and camera flashes cut the air. Adaora wore a teal lace wrapper and carried trays from the kitchen, helping the waiters when they fell behind. She didn't see Madame Nwokoye watching until the older woman said, flat, "A wife should be among guests, not staff." "I go where I'm useful," Adaora replied, a small smile shielding her. It wasn't defiance, it was truth. In a corner, Somto took a call that made his eyebrows lift. Work news, judging by the way he paced. He barely touched his food. When he returned, he kissed Adaora's forehead and whispered, "You're wonderful." She held that word like a lantern. But across the room, Chiamaka's laughter rang, and Madame Nwokoye leaned toward the governor's wife with conspiratorial delight. That night, Adaora placed her wrapper carefully in the wardrobe and stood very still. She could not name the hinge on which her life was turning, but she could feel it. A house measuring her, a mother-in-law writing rules she did not say out loud, a husband she loved drifting toward the image his mother preferred. In her chest, something small and stubborn refused to go dim. She did not know it yet, but that quiet ember would one day become a blaze a whole city would see. By the end of the month, Adaora could map the Nwokoye hierarchy the way a chef maps a pantry. At the top, Madame Nwokoye, queen of optics, reader of society pages, donor to galas with glass backdrops and cameras. Next, Chief Nwokoye, who had built freight logistics into a continental bridge and spoke with a softness that protected thunder. Then the siblings, Iffy, an image consultant whose every sentence featured the word brand, and Chisholm, an MBA who wore loafers without socks and said scale a lot. Somto, the eldest, was a crown, calm, strategic, the one who made Banks relax when he walked into a room. Adaora learned their rituals. Fresh lilies in the foyer on Mondays, gardenia candle for guests, a hushed driver swap outside church so cameras never caught a license plate twice. The kitchen ran like an orchestra. The chef, a slender man named Marcel who truly had trained in Paris, produced cakes so precise they felt designed in auto-CAD. He treated Adaora kindly, sneaking her warm madeleines with a wink. "Simple is not lesser," he whispered once. "It is just simple." Still, the comparison sharpened. Chiamaka would host this brunch without a hair out of place, Aunt Ngozi said, sipping champagne. "She speaks on panels. Ada, panels." Iffy scrolled through Instagram showing Chiamaka in a white pantsuit at a foundation dinner, then lingered a beat too long on the comments filled with heart emojis and queen. In reply, Adaora showed no wound. She poured her energy into her fledgling catering business, Taste of Grace, still operating from a tiny shared kitchen in Odja. She'd retained 2 clients from before marriage, a banker who liked her offong and a tech startup that needed trays of small chops. "Focus on quality," she told her 2 assistants. "We are not rich yet, but we will be excellent." She plated puff-puff like pearls and built suya skews with painterly care. When she delivered orders herself, she left handwritten thank you notes. The clients kept coming back. Inside the mansion, her efforts disappeared into the carpet. "We have staff for that," Iffy would say when Adaora reached for folded napkins. "We have vendors for that," Madam would add if she mentioned her business. The message was consistent. This house's image, and your image is not enough. A rainy Thursday brought the next test. The family hosted a meet and greet for investors. Adaora offered to coordinate logistics. She had spreadsheets, vendor contacts, and a knack for flow. Madam patted her hand. "Leave it to Iffy. These are people of taste." At the event, a decorative arch collapsed under wet florals. A waiter tripped. Adaora slipped into motion, catching trays, rerouting guests, calming panic with a smile. The evening stabilized, laughter returned, and the violinist never stopped playing. Later, Iffy accepted praise for crisis management, while Madam declared, with an A-shot, "Presence is everything. Some people just don't have it." After guests left, Chief Nwokoye found Adaora in the kitchen sipping ginger tea. "You handle that like a general," he said, eyes kind. "Thank you, sir," she replied, surprised. He hesitated. "My wife wants the best for our name. Sometimes wanting becomes something sharper." He left it there, a bridge he could not cross. On Instagram, Adaora watched Chiamaka glide through the season like a swan. Keynote here, ribbon cutting there. Comments crowned her Lagos royalty. It didn't envy Adaora, it clarified her mirror. She wasn't competing. She was building. One evening, Somto arrived late, smelling of rain and tired negotiations. "Mom asked me to join the Governor's Fund Committee," he said, almost apologetic. "Good for you," Adaora answered. "Serve well." He studied her face. "Are you okay?" She considered lying. "It hurts sometimes," she admitted. "Not because wealth intimidates me, but because I am measured by it." He pulled her close. "You are my wife." The words mattered. But downstairs, Madam was already on the phone discussing the committee photo op. The next Sunday, after Mass, a gossip blogger spotted the family leaving church. Cameras swung, Microphones materialized, and someone shouted, "Where's the new bride?" The question pierced like a spear because of the way the blogger looked at Adaora, as if she were a placeholder. That night, the headline read, "Will Sumto Nwokoye finally marry up? City's it girl spotted with family." Adaora didn't show the article to Sumto. He saw it anyway. "Mom will handle it," he said, jaw set. "She knows these people." Adaora nodded, then took a long, quiet breath. Downstairs, she baked banana bread and left it cooling on a rack. The staff cut generous slices and murmured blessings over her name. The mansion had a rhythm and a crown. Adaora had a compass and a foundation you could not photograph. Every day, the gap widened between what the house celebrated and what her heart knew as true. She did not plan revenge. She planned dinner for the next day's clients, adjusted spice level for an older banker's palate, repaired a fraying hem, and kept her voice soft. In a world tuned to volume, softness is radical. It would be her greatest weapon when the storm finally broke. The plan began, as many dangerous things do, with polite conversations that turned screws no one could see. Madam didn't shout, she curated. She invited Chiamaka to 2 family dinners to discuss a charity collaboration. She hosted a brunch and sat Chiamaka beside Chief, then posted a carousel of photos with a caption about young women of vision. She called a stylist to help Adaora for a cousin's wedding, then suggested outfits with a whisper of mockery, too loud, too plain, never quite right. All the while, she told relatives, "We're guiding Ada. She's sweet, but our family carries a standard." In staff WhatsApp groups, rumors sprouted like mold. Madam says new wife no get class. I hear she counts leftovers. She day tell chef how to salt. Someone leaked a grainy video of Adaora rinsing plates. The caption, "Housewife or house help?" It bounced through blogs and back channels. Adaora pretended not to see it. Sumto saw it and clenched his fists. "I'll sue them," he said. Madam waved the air. "Noise will make it bigger. Let it die." She didn't intend for it to die. Madam began logging incidents in a leather notebook. The chef's order was delayed by 2 hours. Adaora interfered with kitchen workflow. A guest misplaced shawl. Adaora moved it. A staff member quitting after chronic lateness. Adaora scolded. Each entry was an impression, a suggestion, a shadow. When Iffy mentioned that investors prefer wives with stage presence, Madam sighed dramatically. If only we had someone who could carry the room like Chiamaka. The name floated like perfume around the house. At night, she visited Sumto's study, ostensibly to discuss charity budgets. She lowered her voice to that intimate maternal cadence son struggled to resist. "My son," she said, "you are soaring. You need someone who understands altitude. Ada is good, but will she not be happy with a man whose life is simpler? We must not be sentimental about destiny." Sumto rubbed his temples. "Mummy, please. Think of the brand," she pressed. "Our name opens doors. A wrong partner closes them quietly." He didn't answer, and silence, in a schemer's hands, often counts as consent. Madam then seeded a bigger lie. She lost a silver bracelet, nothing special, but shiny enough, and hinted that staff seemed overly friendly with Adaora. "I don't like moral looseness," she told the house manager loud enough for 2 cousins to hear. By the weekend, the rumor had mutated. Adaora shared gift with staff to curry favor. She kept pantry keys. She tracked wine bottles. She, someone whispered, had sticky fingers. No one could source the claim. That's how effective it was. Adaora kept moving with a gentle efficiency, unaware that a net had been cast. She bought fresh Zobo leaf for the driver who misses Village's festival. She replaced a housekeeper's cracked phone screen. She topped up data for the gardener's son. Her kindness, reinterpreted, became attempts to control staff. When she asked for a receipt, it became obsession with money. When she reminded a cousin to thank the caterers, it became undermining If's authority. On a Tuesday morning, Madam summoned the family to the sitting room with brisk urgency. "My bracelet," she said, "has gone again, the one with mother of pearl." The staff lined up, confused and nervous. The house manager had already searched drawers. I shifted to Adaora, the only one not on salary, the outsider. She stood very still, then said quietly, "Search my things." Marcel flinched. "Madam, no." But Madam smiled a saint smile. "Ada insists. Let us clear the air." They searched. They found nothing. "See!" Adaora said, calm and pale. Madam sighed theatrically. "Then someone is lying in this house." That night, Madam found the bracelet under a cushion and announced it like a queen granting mercy. "It's handled," she told the WhatsApp family group, studying the message with prayer hands. The story, however, had metastasized. A blogger posted, "Missing jewelry drama at Nwokoye mansion, daughter-in-law questioned." The comments wrote themselves. Somto pleaded for patience. "Mum will get over it," he told Adaora. She nodded. "I don't need her to get over it," she said. "I need you to see it." He looked wounded, which is what good men sometimes look like when asked to choose courage over comfort. The Trap's final hinge was an 800-guest fundraiser at the Eco Convention Center. The family would attend with cameras swirling, and Madam needed an ending the internet would not forget. She rehearsed her lines in her mind like a monologue. She arranged for a photographer who owed her favors. She prayed, too, because even schemers ask heaven to endorse their scripts. Adaora ironed her emerald dress again and again until it lay like water. She planned to keep her head down, smile when spoken to, and go home early to prep puff-puff batter for a morning order. She did not know that within 48 hours she would pack a small bag and leave the mansion alone through the service gate. The ballroom glittered like a crown, floor-to-ceiling drapes, chandeliers dripping light, tables dressed in gold. The Nwokoyes arrived in a tableau calibrated for lenses. Chief dignified, Madam radiant in coral beads, the siblings poised, Somto immaculate in midnight tux. Adaora followed slightly behind, emerald dress a quiet ocean among waves. Cameras clicked. "Over here." "One more." Adaora smiled and stepped aside so the family's profile, their practiced geometry, would remain undisturbed. She knew her role: be graceful, be brief. Midway through the evening, while a saxophonist laced highlight through clinking cutlery, Madam rose and tapped her glass. "Friends," she said, voice silk over steel, "charity begins at home. When standards fall, we must correct them with love." The line was odd enough to still the air. She lifted her wrist. "My late mother's diamond bracelet has been missing again. We found it, praise God, but I cannot abide carelessness. In a house like ours, trust is the only true gold." Heads tilted. Eyes found Adaora like birds finding a seed. Somto frowned. "Mum." "And so," Madam continued gently, "we must set an example. There will be audits of all household accounts, pantry keys, and access. Even family must be above reproach." The word landed like a gavel. A cousin suddenly gasped. On the carpet near Adaora's chair, glinting under a stray spotlight, lay a delicate bracelet. Security, too eager, swooped. "Please, Madam," one said, palm out. Adaora blinked, mind blank, then leaned down to pick it up, reflex more than decision. Cameras clicked, a chorus. Someone whispered, "Evidence." Another, "Ah, God." "It's not mine," Adaora said, voice steady. "I've never seen this." "Bring it," Madam said softly, not looking at her. The softness was worse than anger. It framed the moment as order versus chaos. Somto stood. "Everybody relax," he said, palms open. "This is a misunderstanding." But the photograph, Adaora bending, bracelet in fingers, had already been seized by the ravenous timeline. The first tweet appeared before dessert. Nwokoye D&L caught red-handed. A blogger went live from a corner, breathy with excitement. The MC cleared his throat and asked for applause for the saxophonist. Adaora placed the bracelet on the table and stepped back. "Search me," she said, strength like glass. "Search my bag. Search my mind if you can." Security retreated, embarrassed. "Ma, no need," the manager murmured. But the damage was done. Eyes had done what eyes do when fed a narrative. She looked at Somto. In his face wrestled love, pride, training, and a mother's will. "Say something," she whispered without words. He swallowed. "We'll discuss at home," he said aloud, voice tight. At home, discussion turned to verdict. In the sitting room, under ancestral portraits, Madam sat like a magistrate. "This is not a court," she said sweetly. "It's family. But family, our family, lives in public. We cannot afford shadows." "I didn't do this," Adaora said. "You know I didn't." "We know nothing," Madam replied, eyes bright. "We only know what the world saw. Perception is reality." Chief cleared his throat. "Let us be careful." "We are being careful," Madam snapped, mask slipping. "To Adaora, you have fought this house's order from the day you arrived. You want to run kitchens, direct staff, rewrite our ways. And now our name is in the gutter. I won't allow it." "Enough," Sumto said, but it was weak. "You will stay with your people for a while," Madam concluded, as if prescribing rest to a patient, "until this dust settles." "A banishment," Adaora said softly. "A boundary," Madam corrected. In their room, Adaora packed a small bag, 2 dresses, a pair of flats, her mother's headscarf, her catering ledger. She waited for Sumto to stop her with the force of love. He held the doorframe instead. "Just give it time," he said. "The internet forgets." She considered the man she married, the one who surprised her with plantain pancakes when she had cramps, who prayed with her when her father fell ill. He was still there, but he was also a son whose mother held the family switchboard. "I will not fight for a chair in a room that does not want me," she said gently, "but I will build a room." She left through the service gate, past a night guard who whispered, "God, go fight for you." Outside, the city smelled like wet tar and fried akara. She called a boat, texted her mother, and turned her phone to airplane mode. By morning, the photo had matured into content, edits with dramatic music, think pieces about class, sneers about housewives who overreach. Adaora boiled water in a one-room shortlet in Yaba and made tea with shaking hands. When she finally looked in the mirror, she saw not a thief, not a victim, but a woman with clean eyes. "Okay," she told her reflection. "We start again." The internet fed, slept, woke, and fed again. By noon, Adaora's name trended under #Lecky Bracelet and #Housewife Scandal. Her catering clients texted carefully worded pauses. "A bank's HR apologized. You know we love your food, but the board thinks a wedding planner ghosted." Even the tech startup, whose founder used to call her Chef G, Senekert will reach out when things are calmer. Calm is what people say when they are leaving. Adaora took the call seated on the edge of a hired mattress. She wrote each cancellation in her ledger, then a note beside it. Not dead, just delayed. She transferred her remaining savings, barely enough for 2 months' rent, into a new business account and labeled it Seed. When you refuse to die, language must follow suit. She went to Port Harcourt to breathe, somewhere her disgrace had not been a headline. Her aunt offered a spare room behind a tailoring shop. The place smelled of starch and hope. "You can stay as long as you want," Auntie said, measuring a customer for Assawoke. "Your mother says you are strong." Adaora smiled because her mother's faith always overestimated and then, somehow, became accurate. She took a job at Ezin's Pot, a small catering outfit that serviced oil company lunches and church events. Madam Ezin, stout and sunny, put Adaora on sauces the first day. "I hear you were married to money," she said gently, tasting a spoonful. "But can you make stew that forgives a long day?" Adaora laughed for the first time in weeks. "Yes, Ma." They worked from dawn. Adaora chopped onions until her eyes learned not to flinch. She learned supply chains, bargaining for tomatoes at the waterfront at 5 a.m., how to choose a reluctant goat the butcher hadn't wanted to sell. She learned that presentation isn't lace and gold charges. It's respect for the person on the other side of the plate. She learned to move like a leader without a title, anticipating shortages, training younger hands, plating with the elegance of a prayer. At night, she watched online videos in the tailoring shop's corner, food science lectures, hospitality management talks, brand storytelling basics. She took notes and dreamed a name that wouldn't flinch under scrutiny. Taste of Grace, then Grace Deluxe of the vision beyond food. The logo she sketched was not a crown. It was a seed. One Sunday after Mass, An usher whispered, "You look like that woman from Lagos." Adaora smiled. "People say that." The woman squeezed her hand. She was treated badly. God will do her own. Blessings sometimes arrive disguised as gossip. Adaora received it. Meanwhile, in Lagos, the Nwokoye brand began to wobble. A supply chain hiccup delayed a key logistics contract. A cousin's careless tweet sparked a minor PR fire. Investors murmured. Inside the mansion, the staff missed a small order Adaora had woven into the house. The way she remembered birthdays, arranged wet slippers near the back door on rainy days, left ground-nut brittle in a jar by the night guard stool. The house was still efficient. It was just less kind. Somto called twice the first week, left voicemails the second, and sent texts the third. He apologized, blamed the internet, asked for patience, and promised to fix it. Adaora typed and deleted a dozen replies, then finally sent one. "Fix yourself first." He didn't reply for 3 days. When he did, it was a photo of the lagoon at sunset with the words, "I miss you." She stared at it for a long time. Missing is a feeling. Fixing is a decision. 2 months in, Ezin's pot catered a corporate luncheon where a soft-spoken man in a linen buba asked for the chef. "Who made this fisherman's soup?" he said, eyes smiling. "Perfection." Madame Ezin pointed at Adaora. "My daughter," she said proudly. The man introduced himself. Chief Nnamdi Okafor, real estate magnate with a reputation for paying on time and mentoring quietly. "I have a foundation dinner next month," he said. "I want exactly this feeling." He tapped his chest. Not just taste. Feeling. Adaora built a menu that told a story. Resilience as texture, humility as spice, joy as plating. She trained the team to move like a dance. The dinner was a triumph. Chief watched from the back like a teacher grading a paper he already knew was brilliant. After, he asked about her business, her dreams, her ledger. She told the truth without gossip. He listened without pity. "I invest in people," he said finally, "not pity projects. You are not a pity project. You are a blueprint." He offered seed capital with tough conditions, proper registration, audited books, service standards written down, brand guidelines that fit on one page. "I don't do handouts," he added. "I do partnerships." She signed with a pen that didn't shake. They registered Grace Deluxe Hospitality Limited Adaora, designed uniforms that looked like calm. She chose a color palette that whispered rather than screamed. She wrote a mission statement in plain English. "We feed dignity." Her first clients came through Chief's referrals, then through the stubborn echo of excellence. Photos on Instagram were tidy and warm, hands plating, faces smiling, women training. Comments read, "Who is behind this?" A few recognized her and wrote, "Is that not?" Most didn't. It didn't matter. One evening, as she locked up their small new kitchen, a message from Lagos arrived, a screenshot of a headline, "Nwokoye Hotel Project stalls amid mismanagement rumors." She stood on the threshold, keys in hand, the night thick with the smell of rain. She felt no glee, only a quiet rearrangement inside. Life, like stew, rewards patience and proper fire. She switched off the light, whispered a prayer for clarity, and went home to rest the bones she had earned. The fall from grace had been public and cruel. The rise would be private, methodical, and impossible to ignore. Adaora's days fell into rhythm. Wake before dawn, pray, boil water, tie her hair, work. Her silence became her armor. Madame Ezin often said, "Silence is not weakness, my daughter, it is strategy waiting for sound." But silence had its weight. Nights in Port Harcourt were noisy, generators humming, laughter from beer parlors. Yet inside Adaora's tiny room, the loneliness felt heavier than any noise. Sometimes, she'd open her phone gallery and scroll through old pictures, her and Somto at the beach, smiling with arms around each other, her cooking in the big Lekki kitchen, hair tied, face radiant. Each photo was a goal she wasn't ready to delete. One evening, her mother called. "Daughter, we heard that the family of your husband is now fighting among themselves. Be still. God is not done." Adaora smiled softly. Be still. That phrase had carried her from disgrace to determination. In her new life, every coin mattered. She learned by ingredient directly from fishermen at Borakiri Wharf, bargained without pride, and measured spices by instinct. She began experimenting with signature recipes, smoky jollof with suya flakes, lemon ginger stew that made people pause mid-bite. Taste of Grace, her dream, was starting to taste like destiny. But even progress couldn't drown emotion. Sometimes she'd cry mid-stir, tears falling into soup. One night she saw Somto's name flash on her screen after months. She stared at it until the call ended. When he texted later, "I still think about you," she replied. "Think less. Build yourself more." Chief Okafor noticed her focus. He often visited the kitchen unannounced. "You remind me of my late wife," he said one afternoon. "She built something from Betrayal, too." He wasn't flirtatious, just respectful, fatherly, impressed by Adaora's calm fire. "Success," he told her, "is the softest revenge." One humid evening, Adaora visited her church for Thanksgiving. The pastor shared, when Joseph was thrown in the pit, he didn't argue. He just waited for the caravan. The message landed like thunder. Adaora knew her caravan was coming. She went home that night and registered a business Instagram page at Grace Deluxe Catering. She posted photos of her dishes, captioned with quiet power, "Forgiveness tastes better with pepper." By the month's end, she had 3 bookings. By Christmas, 10. Her savings doubled. Madam as in wept with pride. "You are no longer my apprentice. You are my story." Still, every success carried a whisper. They disgrace you publicly. Wait till they see your comeback. Success never announced itself loudly for Adaora. It crept in like dawn through curtains. Her small kitchen expanded into a rented commercial space with shining countertops and 6 workers, all women who had stories like Hayes, abandoned, underpaid, overlooked. She trained them personally. Presentation, she'd say, demonstrating, is how the world learns to respect your effort. She began getting contract for office lunches, bridal showers, and oil company events. Her Instagram grew to 20,000 followers. Influencers tagged her food as a taste of class with conscience. Even her former critics shared her reels, unaware she was at Adaora. One day, Chief Okafor invited her to Abuja for a major conference banquet. "I want Grace Deluxe to cater it," he said. "Ministers will attend. Handle it quietly and excellently." Adaora agreed. The challenge thrilled her. At the banquet, everything gleamed: marble floors, chandeliers, and foreign dignitaries. When the first dish was served, murmurs filled the room. People took photos. The minister's wife called Adaora to her table. "Who made this? I haven't tasted anything so refined in years." Adaora bowed slightly. "Thank you, Ma. Grace Deluxe." Chief Okafor smiled from across the hall. "You've arrived," he mouthed. That night, social media buzzed with photos of the banquet. Adaora's face appeared in lifestyle blogs with a headline, "Meet the calm chef behind Nigeria's most elegant banquet." Her follower count tripled overnight. But fate, with its strange symmetry, was already arranging her return to Lagos. Weeks later, her company was invited to bid for a high-end corporate event, a luxury investment gala hosted by Nwokoye Holdings. When her assistant mentioned the client, Adaora froze. The past she buried had resurfaced wearing a new opportunity. She prayed, then signed the contract. "We deliver excellence to everyone," she told the team, "even those who hurt us." The night before the event, she couldn't sleep. She thought of the mansion, the shame, the tears. But she also thought of who she'd become, a CEO, mentor, and provider. "Tomorrow," she whispered to herself, "I return not as a wife they rejected, but as a woman God rebuilt." Back in Lagos, Somto had remarried, not to Chiamaka, but to Pamela, a glamorous socialite his mother adored. Madame Nwokoye called her the perfect daughter-in-law. She was everything Adaora wasn't: loud, photogenic, and socially powerful. But behind the perfume and polished photos was chaos. Pamela treated staff like dust, demanded weekly shopping sprees, and filmed every moment for Instagram. The mansion became a filming studio. "Smile, Mummy," she'd shout while recording her mother-in-law stirring stew. "We're doing Family Fridays." Madame forced smiles to the camera, but hated the invasion of privacy. Within a year, Pamela's reckless spending bled the family business. She convinced Somto to invest in a luxury skincare brand, which turned out to be a scam. She borrowed against his shares without telling him. Investors began to panic. Still, the family tried to maintain the facade. At one event, Pamela wore a diamond choker and told guests, "Somto doesn't need to work too hard. I manifest wealth." It became a meme. Madam started noticing cracks. Pamela insulted her openly during arguments, calling her old school. Chiamaka, now happily married elsewhere, even called to warn Somto, "You replace grace with glitter. Be careful." Somto began drinking quietly. He'd stare at the empty end of the bed, remembering Adaora's calm laughter. When the family heard Grace Deluxe Catering had been hired for their upcoming corporate gala, Madam scoffed. Whoever she is, she better know how to handle class. No one knew the woman behind the brand was Adaora herself. Destiny had dressed her in elegance and sent her back to the same stage that once disgraced her. The Nwokoye Holdings Gala was held at the same eco-convention center where Adaora had once been humiliated. The same chandeliers, the same marble floor. The difference now? She wasn't a guest. She was a vendor everyone depended on. As guests arrived, her team glided across the hall in black uniforms embroidered with Grace Deluxe. The scent of grilled seafood and coconut rice floated through the air. Adaora wore a white jumpsuit with gold accents, simple, regal. Her confidence filled the room before her name did. When Somto entered with Pamela on his arm, he froze. The tray he'd reached for slipped slightly as he saw Adaora directing staff near the dessert station. She turned, caught his gaze, and for a second, time stopped. Pamela noticed. "You know her," she whispered sharply. Somto didn't answer. Madame Nwokoye, standing beside investors, followed his line of sight and nearly dropped her wine glass. "Adaora," she gasped. Adaora walked over calmly, clipboard in hand. "Good evening, Ma. I hope everything is satisfactory." The older woman stammered. You're in charge here." "Yes, Ma. Grace Deluxe Hospitality." Pamela smirked. "Oh, the ex-wife turned caterer. How poetic." Adaora smiled politely. "I feed bodies, not egos." Then she excused herself and went back to work. Throughout the night, Adaora's professionalism radiated. Even Madam's stiff friends whispered admiration. The whole pulsed with praise. When the minister publicly commended Grace Deluxe for redefining Nigerian hospitality, the cameras panned to Adaora and caught Somto's eyes brimming with regret. After the event, Chief Okafor approached her in front of everyone. "My company just acquired new assets in Lagos. We'll need a hospitality division head. I can think of only one person suitable." "Who?" a guest asked. He smiled. "The woman who turned disgrace into grace." The room applauded. Madam's knees felt weak. Pamela's face stiffened. And Somto, watching silently, knew the tide had turned forever. 2 days later, Adaora received a message from an unknown number. "Can we talk? I owe you more than an apology." "Somto." She hesitated, then agreed to meet at a neutral place, a cafe overlooking the lagoon. When he arrived, he looked older, heavier with guilt. "You look different," he said softly. "I am," she replied. "Pain reshapes people." He sighed. "I was a coward, Adaora. I let my mother decide my life. I destroyed the only thing pure in it." Adaora stirred her tea. "I don't hate you, Somto. I outgrew you." He looked down. "Our company is falling apart. Investors are leaving. Pamela, she's exactly what your mother wanted." Adaora finished gently. "The perfect daughter-in-law." Tears gathered in his eyes. "You become everything she said you couldn't be." "I didn't become," Adaora said. "I always was. You just couldn't see it then." Across the lagoon, a boat horn wailed, the sound of distance. Before they parted, Somto asked, "Would you ever forgive me?" She smiled faintly. "Forgiveness doesn't mean return. It means release." As she walked away, the sunlight glinted on the cafe window, catching a reflection, calm, regal, whole. That evening, Madame Nwokoye called Chief Okafor privately. "About that acquisition, can we meet?" He agreed. The next day, when she entered the boardroom and saw Adaora sitting at the head of the table, pen poised to sign the takeover papers, she realized Karma had worn heels and arrived early. Her silence that once offended them had returned with authority, and soon it would make them kneel. The fall of Nwokoye Holdings was quiet at first, a delayed shipment, a cancelled contract, a nervous call from a bank. But when numbers lie long enough, truth erupts like thunder. Pamela's luxury skincare venture had drained 300 million Nigerian nairas in fake invoices. Their warehouse lease expired because she forgot to renew it. Investors who once smiled at Somto's name now avoided his calls. The family driver whispered, "Money done disappear from Manchino." Somto sat in his father's office one evening, staring at spreadsheets that refused to balance. "How did this happen?" he muttered. Chief Nwokoye sighed. "When you marry for image, you lose the substance that builds it." Pamela was unapologetic. "Why so dramatic?" she snapped. "Businesses recover." Her tone sparked fury in Madame Nwokoye. "Recover?" she screamed. "You ruined my son's legacy with selfies and handbags." Pamela laughed. "Legacy? The only legacy you built is pride." Then she stormed out, live streaming her tantrum on Instagram. By week's end, tabloids screamed. Nwokoye empire crashes, socialite wife blamed. Madam couldn't leave the house without whispers following. Church women who once envied her pearls now pitied her. She fell ill from stress, refusing visitors. Somto, desperate, reached out to old partners. They declined meetings. "Your reputation's toxic," one said gently. The only potential buyer interested in their assets was a new rising company, Serenity Group, a hospitality conglomerate quietly buying real estate, hotels, and logistics properties across Lagos. When Somto saw the acquisition proposal, his breath caught. The CEO's name read, Adaora C. Nwokoye. He drove straight to the address listed, a glass building in Victoria Island with a Grace Deluxe logo shining on its facade. At the reception, he stood frozen as Adaora stepped out of a boardroom in a white power suit. She didn't look surprised. "Hello, Somto," she said calmly. "You came right on time." He opened his mouth, but no words came. "I hear Serenity is buying your company," she added, voice like silk over steel. "I'll make sure the staff are treated fairly." You Serenity," he whispered. She smiled faintly. "I am Serenity." He sank into a chair, defeated. For the first time, he saw her not as a woman who once begged for his mother's approval, but as a woman his mother should have feared. By morning, the deal was trending online. Serenity Group buys Nwokoye Holdings, CEO identified as former daughter-in-law. Madam nearly fainted when she saw the headline. "God, my enemies have mocked me," she wailed. Chief tried to steady her. "Maybe she'll save us, not destroy us." Somto begged Adaora for a meeting, and she agreed, this time in her office, not a cafe. The decor was minimalist, all white and gold, her company slogan framed on the wall. "We feed dignity." "Why are you doing this?" he asked. She folded her hands. "Because what you built was valuable, until ego infected it. I'm saving the parts worth keeping." "I can't face my mother," he murmured. "You should," she replied. It's time she sees who she tried to erase. When the acquisition signing day arrived, the Nwokoyes entered the boardroom like humbled royalty. Cameras flashed. Reporters whispered. At the table's head sat Adaora, pen poised. Madam forced a brittle smile. "My daughter." Adaora raised a hand. "Please, Ma. Today, I'm Madam Chair." The silence cut deep. She signed the documents gracefully, sealing the takeover. Then she turned to the staff. "Everyone who worked faithfully will remain employed. Loyalty must not suffer because leadership failed." Applause filled the room. Cameras caught the tears streaming down Madam's face. Online, headlines exploded again. From disgrace to dynasty, Adaora Nwokoye now owns her ex's family empire. Her story went viral, millions sharing it with captions like #GraceWins and #God of Second Chances. Adaora didn't gloat. Instead, she issued a public statement. "Forgiveness isn't weakness. It's clarity. I didn't come back to destroy. I came back to rebuild. Her calmness became her crown. The next week, the company held a press event to introduce the new board. Cameras flashed, reporters buzzed, and Adaora walked in wearing a cream igbada, regal yet simple. She began her speech. Once upon a time, I was part of this family. I left with nothing but peace in my heart. Today, I return with purpose, not vengeance. Every fall, when handled with grace, becomes a foundation. The audience erupted in applause. Then, unexpectedly, she invited Madame Nwokoye to the stage. The older woman, trembling, tried to decline. Adaora insisted. "Ma, please, come stand beside me." When Madame reached the podium, Adaora turned to her and said through the mic, "For the record, this woman once called me unworthy, but she also raised a son who once gave me love, however imperfect. I forgive her." The whole went silent. Madame wept openly, clutching at Adaora's hands. "I wronged you," she cried, "and now the world knows who the real woman is." The image, the once disgraced daughter-in-law holding her weeping former mother-in-law, dominated the internet for days. Hashtags trended. She came back with grace. Chief Nwokoye approached later, eyes soft. "Adaora, thank you. You saved more than a company. You saved our name." She nodded. Sometimes God uses disgrace to disinfect pride. From that day, the Nwokoye employees referred to her quietly as Madam Grace. Her leadership restored profits within months. But more than numbers, she restored dignity, the very thing they'd stripped from her. Somto visited her office one evening when everyone had left. "You didn't have to help us," he said quietly. "I didn't do it for you," she replied. "I did it for every woman who was told she wasn't enough." He walked closer. "I see you now. Adaora, the woman you become. I wish I protected you." She looked at him, not with anger, but peace. "You can't protect someone you don't respect." He nodded, tears glistening. "Do you ever miss what we had?" She smiled sadly. "I miss who I was before you all broke me. But I thank God for who I became because of it." Outside, rain began to fall, drumming softly on the glass. Madame Nwokoye entered, frail but determined. She dropped to her knees before Adaora. "Forgive me," she whispered. "I disgraced you before the world. I can't sleep." Adaora stood, startled, then lifted her gently. "Stand up, Ma. You taught me resilience, even through cruelty. I forgive you fully." Somto helped his mother into a chair, overwhelmed. In that room, once filled with humiliation, a strange peace settled. Not triumph, not revenge, just quiet justice. When they left, Adaora sat alone and whispered, "Thank you, Lord, for letting them see." Within hours, a journalist leaked the footage of Madame Nwokoye kneeling before Adaora. It went viral across Nigeria, Ghana, and beyond. From Taze to throne, the daughter-in-law who made them kneel. Adaora Nwokoye, the woman who rewrote revenge with forgiveness. Talk shows debated her humility. Churches used her story in sermons. Memes flooded social media, some mocking, most admiring. Influencers called her the embodiment of grace under fire. She trended on TikTok with clips of her speeches remixed over gospel instrumentals. One network requested an exclusive interview. She accepted on one condition: no questions about revenge, only redemption. During the interview, the host asked, "What do you say to women enduring disrespect?" Adaora's eyes glistened. "Don't fight to be accepted. Build something they'll need." The quote exploded online. Within a week, she was invited to speak at women's empowerment summits nationwide. Meanwhile, Pamela tried to rekindle relevance with online drama, accusing Somto's family of hypocrisy. The public ignored her. Her followers dwindled. Even tabloids lost interest. Somto quietly finalized his divorce. For the first time in years, the mansion grew peaceful. One morning, Adaora received a package from Madame, her old emerald dress, washed, pressed, and wrapped in gold paper, with a note. "The day you wore this, I saw only smallness. Now I see greatness. Mama N." Adaora smiled through tears. She wore it again that evening. not as a wife they mocked, but as a woman they now admired. That night, she prayed, "Lord, thank you, not for making them kneel, but for teaching me to stand." Her story had gone viral, but more importantly, her peace had gone eternal. The Nwokoye mansion felt smaller when Adaora walked in again, not because the house had shrunk, but because she had grown. The air carried no bitterness, only humility and awe. Staff who once ignored her now bowed deeply. "Welcome, madam," they whispered. Madam Nwokoye sat in the same living room where she'd once accused Adaora of theft. The sunlight poured in, illuminating her frail face. Beside her was Chief, silent and ashamed, and Somto, quieter than she'd ever seen him. Madam rose slowly, tears already spilling. "I have waited for this day," she said, voice trembling. "Not because I want mercy, but because I need cleansing." Adaora stood still. "I destroyed you, my daughter. I lied, I schemed, I wanted perfection, not peace. I thought class made a family. I didn't know character was a true wealth." Her knees touched the marble floor before Adaora could stop her. "Forgive me," she whispered. "I took your name, your peace, and your home." Adaora's throat tightened. She knelt too, taking the older woman's hands. "Stand, Mama. You're forgiven. If I hadn't been broken, I wouldn't have been built." Chief wiped his eyes. "You've restored us, Adaora. You've done what we couldn't, turned disgrace into legacy." Somto stepped forward, emotion choking him. "I was weak, Adaora. You deserved a husband, not a puppet. I hope life give me a chance to make peace." Adaora met his eyes. "Peace doesn't always mean partnership. But yes, you have it." They sat together for hours, not talking about the past, just sharing silence that healed. As Adaora left, Madam followed her to the gate. "You once said you'd build your own room," she said. "Now, the whole mansion bears your design." Adaora smiled. "No, Mama, God designed it. I just furnish it with patience." Days after the reconciliation, Adaora's face graced every major TV screen. BBC Africa, the woman who forgave public humiliation. CNN Africa, Adaora Nwokoye, from disgrace to destiny. But Adaora remained calm, refusing fame to harden her humility. She focused on Grace Deluxe, expanding into event management and hospitality training. Reporters called her the calm CEO. She called herself a servant in heels. Somto visited one last time. He came without bodyguards, without excuses, just a man stripped of image. "I'm leaving for Canada," he said softly. "I need to start over. I'm not asking for us back. I just needed to tell you. I'm proud of you." She nodded, sincerely. "Go and rebuild. Let the lesson stay." He reached into his pocket and handed her the wedding ring she'd left behind years ago. "This used to represent a promise," he said. "Now, it represents a reminder." She took it, smiled faintly, then let it remind us both that love without respect is poverty. As he turned to leave, Adaora felt no anger, only peace. Their story had been a storm, but storms wash the earth clean. That evening, she wrote in her journal, "Forgiveness isn't surrender. It's power under control." Then she turned off her phone, poured herself tea, and enjoyed the rare stillness of a woman who needed no validation. Months later, Adaora launched the Grace Foundation, a non-profit for widows, single mothers, and young women who've been silenced by shame. Its motto, "We don't just feed mouths, we feed futures." At the opening ceremony, women from all over Nigeria gathered in bright head wraps, singing songs of survival. Adaora stood at the podium in a cream lace gown, her calm voice carrying like music. "When I was disgraced," she said, "I thought my name was over. But God turned my disgrace into grace. So now I'll help others rewrite theirs." The foundation's first beneficiaries were trained in catering, business etiquette, and branding. Within months, several women launched their own micro-businesses. One sent her a message, "Because of you, my children now eat 3 times a day." The media praised her again, but Adaora never sought spotlight. When asked how she measured success, she replied, "By the number of women standing taller." She soon partnered with Chief Okafor to open a women's enterprise center in Port Harcourt, returning to the city that once sheltered her. During the ribbon cutting, Madame Ezin, her former mentor, stood beside her, tears of joy on her cheeks. "You have fulfilled what I prayed," she said. "You've become what they said you couldn't." Behind Adaora hung a banner that read, "Grace isn't luck. Grace is surviving humiliation and still choosing kindness." The hall was filled beyond capacity. Cameras rolled, lights burned softly, and a million viewers watched live as Adaora took the stage at the Global Women's Leadership Summit in Abuja. She looked poised and white, no jewelry, no flash, just presence. "Years ago," she began, "I stood in a room where I was falsely accused. I watched my husband stay silent, my name destroyed, my peace stripped. That night, I thought my life was over." The crowd fell silent. But I learned something in that pain. When they bury you, they forget seeds grow underground. And when God waters you with tears, you rise taller than those who threw dirt. The audience erupted in applause. Adaora waited for calm before continuing. "I came back, not with revenge, but with results. They disgraced me publicly, but God elevated me privately. And when my time came, I didn't need to fight. I just needed to arrive." Her closing words echoed like scripture. "If they ever tell you that silence is weakness, remember this story, because my silence built an empire." The whole rose to its feet, cheering, many crying. The video broke YouTube record within hours, trending as #Grace Speech across Nigeria, Ghana, and South Africa. In that moment, Adaora stopped being just a woman wronged. She became a symbol. 10 years later, Adaora stood once again before the Nwokoye mansion. It had changed, smaller, quieter, almost humble. The grand Nwokoye holding sign was gone, replaced by one that read the Serenity Center, now one of Grace Deluxe subsidiaries. She walked through the gate slowly, her steps echoing against the marble. Staff bowed. Cameras followed from a respectful distance. Inside the living room, the entire family, Chief, Madam, Somto, waited. Their faces carried years of age and reflection. Madam rose shakily and went down on both knees. "For every tear, for every word, for every humiliation, we kneel not before your wealth, but before your grace." Chief followed. "You saved what we built, and in doing so, you saved us." Somto knelt last. "You're the best thing this family ever lost, and the greatest lesson we ever learned." Adaora stepped forward and lifted them, one by one. "Please stand." Grace doesn't gloat. It restores. Tears streamed down their faces. A photographer caught the moment, the same angle where years ago she'd been accused of theft. Only now, the story was reversed. She walked to the balcony, looking out over the compound where she'd once cried herself to sleep. The sunset bathed her in gold. Her assistant approached. "Madam, your speech tonight is trending already. Again." Adaora smiled. "Let it. The story isn't mine anymore. It belongs to every woman who's been silenced." As she walked out, a breeze lifted a scarf. The camera froze on her silhouette, strong, calm, free. The narrator's voice, for your YouTube adaptation, closes the episode. They disgraced her publicly, but her return made them kneel. Because grace doesn't seek revenge, it builds empires quietly until everyone who doubted must stand, or kneel. Fade to black. Clapperboard, end of story.